Welcome to India. Thank you so much for being here.
All right, thank you, Anant, and thank you for joining me on stage. So we just heard about ChatGPT. Clearly, the buzz, everyone's talking about it. We can't stop anyone from talking about it. So what are you seeing in terms of generative AI, the excitement, and how optimistic are you about it?
So first up, I think it seems as if it's been around very long. I was just looking at the date today. It's not even been 3 months that we've seen this technology and generative AI being that popular in the common discourse. And maybe if I step back and say India is at 75 today, 75 years of independent India, and if I go back India at 50, there was another new technology that was really taking shape, and there were a lot of people saying, hey, listen, I don't know what this will do to the world. I don't like it. It'll change the human behavior, and so on. That was the mobile phone. 25 years back, most people in the room at that point in time would not have had that device. Today, I think some are carrying 2 of them in their pockets or bags. So if I take that analogy and look at what generative AI is doing today, it's very early days, very, very early days of what this technology would do. I think I'll pick on the notion that even Shraddha had brought just a little while back in a very humorous context. But she referred to it as the assistant. I would change that word and call it the co-pilot. Because I think that's the word that I identify a lot more. It is somebody who can help me do my work and not just be an assistant. To me, that's the capability that I see with generative AI. It could be any kind of work, and if I can do that better going forward, then it's a great co-pilot for me. Amongst the first use cases that is already being seen very actively and very relevant to everybody in the audience today in the tech industry is around software. So how can I write better software, be more productive as we go along? And Andre Karpati, he used to be at Tesla and lead the AI labs there, tweeted on 1st of January saying a large percentage, 80% of his software, he's getting GitHub Copilot to write it and building on top of it. And I think that's where his recent tweet was, English is the new programming language. Because I think you are able to now interact to get the basic lines of codes written and do a lot more work along with it. So I think it's a great time for industry here, and you can take that same co-pilot analogy and take it to many other professions where you can do more with the capabilities that we have, and therefore I think tech becomes a deflationary force in an inflationary environment. Let me ask you, you see the world, you're at McKinsey, you talk to a lot of clients. How are clients reacting across the world, and what kind of asks are they having with you around generative AI?
Yeah, thank you. And your point about everyone wanting to use it everywhere, I think that's what we're seeing, right? There's not one CEO or C-suite person who isn't asking the question, what is it? How can I use it? What can it do for my business? And so I think you should think about it. You talked about the Copilot and GitHub from an engineering perspective as a great use case, but we're seeing in other areas. So I'll use the company Profluent, which is focused on protein design. Just think about what that can do for drug discovery, clinical trials. I mean, the applicability across industries is just pervasive. So as we think about it, we need to build education around what are the use cases in the functions, how we go to market, to your point about how you augment, but how do you accelerate your business? In a downturn economic environment that we see now, where productivity, costs, what are the ways we can augment and automate to improve productivity? So those are some of the things that we're seeing. But we also have to think about ethics and risk. And I would say that we also have to beef up our compliance and risk organizations to really think about how you use it, what are the ethical things that could occur, what are the risks associated as I embrace generative AI, and how do I remove those things and protect my company? So I think, you know, we've got pros, early days, to your point, but we have to be responsible as we think about the usage.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more in terms of the underlying platform being of trust. Now, generative AI is one platform, but there are many other platforms that you see in technology being used across the world, and new platforms are coming through. So as you look at clients globally, as you look at trends globally, would you speak a little broadly about technology platforms and the innovation that you're seeing?
Well, I think if you think about SIs and where we need to be, it really is about how do you think about it from an industry back. And so what are the platforms, and we all have those today. We have the cloud, we have infra going, we have edge computing, we have quantum computing. How do we embrace all of these to then create these new models for industry? And I think what I'm seeing is that there's the element of how does an SI understand the verticals? How do we build the infrastructure and the layers to then go to market for our customers? And then what are some of the enabling things from a low-code, no-code perspective to then help us from an engineering and product development perspective?
No, so I'll maybe just build on that. You mentioned the last bit around low-code, no-code, and as to how the platforms are expanding. And I see that across the world in many of the situations that we are seeing, where and we had a great example from State Bank of India in the country, where this was a person with disability of eyesight, and this person really understood the processes that happened in this branch in south of India for credit management. But there was no software written on it. It was repeated process that was happening. And this person then really got a low-code, no-code application to build a simple process flow to start automating that capability. And very soon, everybody in the branch was using that process flow, and now that is being rolled out from that branch to a wider cross-section across the State Bank of India. And I think that is really the kind of platforms that we need to drive a lot more productivity. I'll keep saying technology is a deflationary force in an inflationary environment, and it allows us to do more with less.
Yeah.
Any thoughts around that?
So I would also add that what it also does is help us remove the barriers for those who normally couldn't get into this industry. So as you think about accessibility, persons with disabilities, this new way of designing and using generative AI to create the code now removes barriers for folks who couldn't be a part of this. So how is India preparing industry for the technologies of today, not future anymore?
So as we speak about India, and I think at times we associate India with just the system integrators and the tech companies that came out of India, but today India means many different things to many different people. For companies like McKinsey, or even if you look at all the Fortune 500 companies, India generally is the biggest innovation center for most of the companies globally. So it's not just leveraging the tech companies coming out of India, but also the capability centers or innovation centers, as we would call them. In addition, there is this entire startup community that we have in India. And if you really look across the board, I tend to call it in two parts. India does lead tech globally. So India leads tech with its export services that we spoke about this morning, and also the talent. But tech leads India with everything that's happening on our digital public goods. And the UPI example was quoted extensively many times earlier in the day, many other platforms that we have. And in addition, the startup community is really driving and solving for problems of today. In a session earlier, I think one of the speakers said, you have to solve for problems of India, and I think the startup community is doing that. So I'm very optimistic and bullish about the capabilities that are coming out of India, but very specifically serving the world as India goes out to serve the world. I think I call it make, which is you really develop capability and IP in India, which other companies here can use to make more. So that's the second make. And then to serve everybody globally, that's the third make.
Yeah.
So it's really bringing that together. How do you see the landscape of services and solutions globally, especially from the vantage point of McKinsey?
No, I agree with you. I think I see also India as the POC of the world, right? Everything from services, digital services, how we expand.
It deserves
here.
a clap.
I do see that. If you can do it here, and I think, what's her name? Shweta, is that? Said, if you could do generative AI, chat GPT here, then you can do it everywhere. I see that as a launch pad for what the rest of the world needs to do. I also think, though, that we're at this inflection point where we solve for world problems, and that's where we need to start from. And so everything from sustainability, which is a horizontal in itself across all verticals, all industries, creates new business opportunities, and leading with that as a technology opportunity, I think that is what we need to do to start building and innovating in ways that we haven't done before.
So I'll have to plug an India pitch, as you said it. Yes, it is the POC of the world, but I think it's also the most scaled innovation landscape, and especially when you see platforms like Aadhaar and UPI coming through, which are happening at billion population scale. I think that's the best scaled sort of outcome that you could see across the planet. So it's already a scaled operation that can then be learned from and passed on to the world.
And that's the POC point as well, because even your digital services for government, education, it's like, you do that here, other countries are asking, how can I do that as well?
Absolutely. So let me come to the last topic that I think any conversation would be incomplete without, is around talent.
Yeah.
And India has definitely led the world from a tech talent point of view. I'd like to get your view as you see the innovation and the breakthroughs happening across the planet, how is India talent being seen, and generally, how does that fit into the global tech talent trends?
So I think there are two things. I think there's, the war for talent still exists. Yes, we have an economic instability. There are major tech layoffs going on. But in the other industries, I was reading an article about Walmart looking for talent, for tech talent. And so I think this notion of how do we upskill, reskill, it really takes a village. And focusing on an ecosystem of skilling to then be able to raise all boats, I think that's the secret sauce that's needed, whether it be in India or anywhere else. So I would say, as you think about how you do it at scale, how does India educate at scale, and what are some of those practices that can be used around the world to then make sure that we are skilling, reskilling at a pace that we need to really do that.
So a couple of perspectives, if I may add there, and I think there was a very interesting conversation that happened when Ashish Dhawan and Sabir Bhatia were speaking. They had conflicting points of views around how the education system should be going forward and what's possible and what's not possible. I think they agreed that there should be more creativity and more inquiry-based learning that needs to happen, and that's beginning to happen with some examples, but to do it at scale. At the same time, I'd also look at it from the tech industry perspective. Where are we at this juncture? If I just look at what is already the situation on the planet on AI, if you look at GitHub and see what is the position of tech talent that is listed there, India is already number 2 behind United States in terms of talent on AI contributing into GitHub. That's the number of talent. But if you look at new repos, that is new IP really coming on AI, India is number 1. So to me, that point that even humorously as yeah. Now you might say, hey, listen, was all that AI taught, and therefore a lot of these people started creating that IP in India? Absolutely not. I think it's a lot of learning that is happening. People have the hustle. They go out and learn with whatever they get. There's a lot of avenues available. Future Skills has done a wonderful job over the last few years from NASSCOM to really bring that new capability across to the existing tech professionals. As somebody in the government once spoke to me and very clearly said, hey, listen, you look at the tech jobs that exist in the country. It's not just the people who are sitting in this room and go to the tech industry. But if you even look at the person who ushered you in an office some time back, or the security guard who's managing a lot of the either offices or condominiums where a lot of people live, that person's also doing a tech job today because he's using a mobile phone or a tablet or a screen in front and managing a lot. There is tech training required for all kinds of jobs that exist in the country today. So I have a lot of optimism around how India is innovating in bringing technology to a large part. I think it's commonly said 1/3 of Indian talent is already tech-enabled. A lot more to go, yes, but 1/3 of a large number is a very large number globally. So that's where I feel optimistic about it. Finally, if I may close just on the tech talent piece in the country, I think it's at both levels. Existing talent, how do we keep upgrading new skills, which is being done by many platforms. But as we bring new talent in, it may not be necessarily just from the engineering colleges. There was enough spoken about empathy and multidisciplinary capabilities coming in. That will be critical to create that trust and ethics in AI.
I would agree with you with one additional point. Disparity exists, right? And so if in this country we can focus on bridging that gap and creating the model by which we shrink disparity, then I'd say that is the litmus test of how you can do it everywhere else. And so this focus on, again, removing barriers, shrinking the disparity through technology, I think is something India I would put out as a challenge.
I would, as an Indian, I would say challenge taken, but already proven. It's not at scale yet of 1 billion, but even if you take 1/3 of 1 billion, it's bigger than most countries on the planet. Thank you so much, Jacky. Thank you for the conversation.
For more interesting content, like, comment, and subscribe to our NASSCOM YouTube channel.